All right, everyone, get ready, because today we are diving into a topic that's about as controversial as, well, let's just say pineapple on pizza carbohydrates.
Oh, yeah, classic debate.
Are they really the dietary villains they're often made out to be, or is there more to the story? Buckle up, because we're about to separate carb fact from fiction in this deep dive.
It's amazing how much our perception of food changes over time. Like one minute everyone's terrified of fat, and the next, it's all about that keto life.
Right, food trends come and go, but carbs always seem to be at the center of it all,
It's true. And right now, it seems like carbs are public enemy number one.
especially when it comes to weight loss.
Wow.
It's all about insulin spikes and cutting carbs to get that lean physique. But is it really that simple?
Well, like most things in nutrition, it's not so cut and dry.
You're saying it's not as simple as carbs make you fat.
Exactly. While it's true that overeating anything can lead to weight gain that's just basic thermodynamics, blaming carbs specifically, the science just doesn't back that up.
Okay, so there's more nuance to it than that. It's not just about the carbs themselves.
Right. Think of it this way. You have a big bowl of white pasta versus a hearty plate of lentil soup. Both have carbs, but they have completely different effects on your body.
Because of the fiber and nutrients in lentils, right?
Exactly. That fiber makes a huge difference. It's about the quality of the carbs, not just the quantity.
So a calorie isn't always just a calorie.
Exactly. There was this fascinating study. Actually, researchers looked at people following a low-carb diet versus those following a low-fat diet over a whole year.
What happened?
Both groups lost similar amounts of weight. It really highlights the importance of focusing on whole, unprocessed carbs over refined ones.
Wow, that's interesting. It really challenges the whole carbs are evil narrative, doesn't it?
It really does. And you know what else is interesting?
What's that?
Our hunter-gatherer ancestors, the ones who are supposedly eating mostly meat, yeah, they were actually eating a significant amount of carbs.
Wait, really? I thought they were all about that paleo diet.
It's a common misconception. They didn't have processed foods or refined sugars, but they ate their fair share of carbs, roots, tubers, even legumes.
Wow, I had no idea. So carbs have been a staple in our diets for a long, long time.
Exactly. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Even before agriculture came along and we started cultivating grains, our ancestors were evolving to digest starches more efficiently.
Like, their bodies were adapting to a more carb-rich diet.
Precisely. They developed extra genes specifically for breaking down those complex carbohydrates.
Wow, extra genes just for carbs. That's incredible. Our bodies must have known something back then. So even our genes are wired for carbohydrates.
It seems that way. I mean, think about it. Every single cell in your body runs on glucose, which is what?
Carbohydrate.
You got it. And even your brain, which can use fat for fuel, still needs at least 20% of its energy from carbohydrates.
Okay, so no matter how you slice it, carbs are essential. But let's talk about fiber for a second, because I feel like it's the unsung hero of the carb world.
Fiber is amazing. It does so much more than just keep things moving, so to speak.
Right. I mean, we all know it's good for digestion, but what else does it do?
It's like the VIP of the digestive system, especially soluble fiber. It helps regulate blood sugar levels, keeps you feeling fuller for longer, which can be helpful with weight management. By the way, it even plays a role in heart health by helping lower cholesterol.
Wow, it really does it all, so maybe carbs aren't the enemy after all.
It seems we may have misjudged them.
But what about all the buzz around gluten-free diets? Is that just a trendy way of avoiding carbs?
That's a great question, and it's important to distinguish between a genuine medical need and, well, a fad.
So is going gluten-free just a fad?
Well, for someone with celiac disease, avoiding gluten is absolutely essential. But for the average person, it's probably not as big of a deal as it's made out to be.
So all those gluten-free products at the grocery store are, what, just marketing hype?
A lot of it is, yeah. There was a study a few years back that found that out of a group of people who self-reported as being gluten sensitive, only a tiny fraction actually had a true intolerance.
Wow, so it might not be the bread itself giving people trouble?
Exactly. It could be something else entirely. Ever feel bloated after eating bread? It might not be the gluten, but rather something called FODMAPs.
FODMAPs, now that's a new one. What are those?
FODMAPs are types of carbs that some people have trouble digesting. This can lead to bloating and all sorts of digestive discomfort.
Interesting. So it could be these FODMAPs causing issues, not gluten.
Exactly. And guess what?
Yeah.
They're often found in the same foods as gluten, so it's easy to see why people might get them confused.
So it might not be the bread itself, but something else in there causing problems. That's wild. It's like we have to be food detectives to figure out what's really going on.
Right. Sometimes it feels like we're overthinking things. Maybe we should get back to basics a bit.
Back to basics,
Like legumes.
legumes, like beans and lentils.
Exactly. They're nutritional powerhouses, and they don't get nearly enough credit.
I feel like they have a bit of a bad reputation.
It's such a shame. People think they're boring or whatever, but they're so versatile and so good for you. Talk about bang for your buck packed with protein, fiber, vitamins, minerals, all for a very reasonable price.
They are pretty affordable. You're right, we should give legumes more love.
Absolutely. And while we're on the topic of foods that deserve more love, can we talk about whole grains?
Yes, whole grains are awesome, but I feel like people get them confused with refined grains, which is a different story.
Exactly. It's night and day, really.
Yeah.
Unlike refined grains, which have been stripped of their nutrients, whole grains are nutritional rock stars. You've got fiber, of course, but also B vitamins, minerals like magnesium and selenium.
All the good stuff.
And you know what else is interesting about whole grains? They're a major part of the Mediterranean diet, which is always getting attention for its incredible health benefits.
The Mediterranean diet is like the gold standard, isn't it?
For good reason. Studies have linked it to a lower risk of so many chronic diseases. We're talking heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, even some cancers.
Wow, that's amazing.
And it's been linked to better brain health and a reduced risk of Alzheimer's. And you know what plays a key role in that? Whole grains.
It's incredible how those small dietary shifts, like opting for whole grains instead of refined ones, can make such a huge impact on our health in the long run.
It really goes to show you, doesn't it? It's not always about these big restrictive changes.
Totally. It's those small, sustainable choices that make a difference over time.
Absolutely. And speaking of sustainability, can we address this idea that you need to ditch carbs entirely for optimal athletic performance?
Oh, yeah, the whole low carb for athletes thing, it's everywhere.
Right. With all the hype around keto and fat adaptation these days, you'd think carbs were the enemy of athletic performance.
So, is there any truth to it?
Well, while going low carb won't necessarily hurt your performance, the research doesn't really show that it makes you faster or stronger either.
Really, there's no magical performance boost from cutting carbs.
So far, the evidence doesn't point to that. There was an interesting study on cyclists who were divided into two groups, high carb and low carb.
Okay, and what happened?
Both groups completed a long cycling trial in pretty similar times, but guess what? When it came to those short, intense sprints, the high carb group blew the low carb group out of the water.
So the high carb group had that extra gear. It's like having premium fuel in the tank, right?
Exactly. Carbs provide that quick, readily available energy that your muscles crave, especially during high-intensity exercise.
So maybe ditching carbs entirely isn't the best strategy for athletes after all.
It seems that way. Now, this is an area with ongoing research, but the current evidence seems to point towards a more balanced approach being best.
Don't ditch those carbs entirely. Listen to your body and find what works best for you. And speaking of long, healthy lives, have you heard of those blue zones everyone's always talking about?
You mean those regions around the world where people are living the longest, healthiest lives?
Exactly. And guess what? They eat carbs.
They do, and they eat a lot of them.
No way, it's true. These folks are living proof that you don't need to cut out carbs to live a long, healthy life.
Exactly.
So spill the tea. Tell me everything about these blue zones.
Well, take Okinawa, Japan, for instance. It's home to one of the highest concentrations of centenarians people living to be 100 or older in the world.
Okay, so what's their secret? What are they eating over there?
Well, the traditional diet is actually quite high in carbohydrates. In fact, before 1950, sweet potatoes made up almost 70% of their calorie intake.
70%. That's a whole lot of sweet potato. Although I'm guessing they weren't eating them with marshmallows or anything.
Probably not. They ate them in their natural form, alongside other plant-based foods like greens, legumes, and some rice.
Interesting. So it's not just about eating carbs, it's about eating the right kind of carbs, whole, unprocessed, and part of a balanced traditional diet.
Right. And it really makes you wonder if we've overcomplicated things in our modern world.
It's easy to get caught up in all the noise, isn't it? All the latest diets and fads.
Exactly. Sometimes I think we've lost sight of the simple wisdom that's been around for centuries.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Maybe we need to simplify our approach to food and get back to those traditional ways of eating.
It's definitely food for thought. And maybe instead of always focusing on what we should be restricting, we should focus on adding in more of those good-for-you carbs that our bodies thrive on.
I love that. Instead of fearing that slice of whole wheat toast or that bowl of lentil soup, we should embrace them as part of a healthy lifestyle.
Exactly. It's all about shifting that mindset from what can't I eat
Mm.
to what can I add to my plate that makes me feel amazing.
Such a good point. It's funny, our ancestors weren't counting macros or stressing about calories. They ate what was available, what was nourishing, and honestly, what probably tasted delicious.
Right, and look at them thriving on diets full of whole, unprocessed carbs. It really makes you wonder, have we overcomplicated our relationship with food?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's time we all take a step back from the diet frenzy and reconnect with the simple joy of eating real, whole foods, carbs included.
Absolutely. Listen to your body, find what makes you feel your best, and most importantly, enjoy your food.
Perfectly said. Well, folks, they find yourself just like laser focused right from the get-go. Like you're firing on all cylinders. We're talking about that feeling of, you're so productive, you're practically writing to-do lists just to cross things off.
Exactly what you mean.
Well, you requested this deep dive to see if morning meditation actually lives up to all the hype.
Yeah.
And we've got some fascinating insights for you from experts like John Matthews and Caroline Schmidt,
Right.
even a little wisdom from Gandhi
No,
himself.
very nice. I like it.
So,
It's interesting you mentioned that feeling of effortless focus, because that's actually one of the key benefits we're going to kind of unpack today. It's not just about feeling calmer,
right.
which is a nice bonus,
Yeah.
but it's about priming your brain for optimal performance, really, throughout the day.
Okay. So let's unpack this idea of priming your brain for a second.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about like subliminal messages or anything here.
Not quite. Think of it more like creating those ideal conditions for focus. You know, John Matthews, he's a licensed clinical social worker, and he argues that the best time to meditate, honestly, is simply when you'll actually do it consistently.
Right.
And for many people, that's mornings.
That makes sense. It's that whole win the morning, win the day.
Exactly. And there's actually a scientific reason mornings work so well.
Hmm.
You're starting with a relatively clean slate mentally.
Yeah, okay.
Before the day's demands and distractions kind of pile up,
Right.
your mind is naturally a bit quieter after sleep.
It's like that peaceful calm you only get like before the rest of the house wakes up.
Yeah.
Just pure bliss.
Yeah, exactly.
But isn't it kind of counterintuitive to meditate more when you're busier? I mean, Gandhi himself said, on the days I am really busy, I meditate for 2 hours instead of 1.
That's a great quote.
Yeah.
And it perfectly illustrates the point. It seems counterintuitive, but by investing that time up front, especially when you feel like you can least afford it,
Yeah.
you're actually equipping yourself to handle the chaos more effectively.
So it's like investing in like mental armor before you're heading into battle.
Precisely. And the benefits, they actually extend far beyond just handling stress.
Mhm.
We're talking improved focus, better emotional regulation,
Right.
and potentially even deeper, more restful sleep later on.
Now that's what I call a win-win.
Right.
But let's get practical for a second. Let's say you're convinced. You want that morning meditation magic. But the thought of adding one more thing to your already jam-packed schedule,
Right.
it's daunting. So where do you even begin?
That's where I think the insights from our sources become incredibly valuable.
Okay.
Caroline Schmidt, she's a licensed clinical social worker,
Yeah.
and she emphasizes that you don't even have to leave the comfort of your own bed to get started.
Oh, interesting.
You're already in a relaxed environment, right?
Right.
Why not capitalize on that?
Yeah.
Even just 5 minutes of focused breathing or a guided meditation app even can make a world of difference.
It's true. Sometimes the hardest part is just getting started. When I first dabbled in meditation, I pictured myself as some kind of like Zen master, sitting cross-legged for hours on end.
Yeah.
But the reality was I could barely sit still for 5 minutes.
That's such a common misconception. Meditation isn't about achieving some picture-perfect state of stillness.
Okay.
It's about cultivating a skill.
Right.
It's like learning a new language or an instrument. It takes time, it takes patience, and it takes a healthy dose of self-compassion.
Absolutely. No judgment allowed in the world of meditation.
Okay.
But seriously, speaking of practical tips, what else did our sources recommend for making this a sustainable habit?
They really emphasized starting small.
Okay.
Aim for just 5 to 10 minutes each morning.
Okay.
And gradually increase the duration as you feel comfortable. Experiment with different locations until you find a space where you feel truly at ease. Maybe it's your bed, maybe it's your couch, maybe it's a quiet corner in your backyard.
I'm all about finding what works best for you. And while we're on the topic of personalization, what about different types of meditation? I mean, there are apps for everything these days.
You're right. And our sources highlighted the value of exploring those options.
Okay.
Guided meditation apps can be a fantastic resource, especially for beginners. They provide structure, they provide guidance, and even like a sense of community that can be really helpful when you're just starting out.
It's like having a meditation mentor in your pocket.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Some apps focus on specific benefits like, improving focus, reducing anxiety, enhancing sleep. There are even apps that incorporate nature sounds or calming music to create a more immersive experience.
Sounds like there's something for everyone.
There really is.
But what about those days when, like, distractions creep in? Like when your mind is racing with to-do lists or you just can't seem to shut off the mental chatter? Any tips for navigating those inevitable bumps in the road?
Distractions are the worst. It's like my brain decides to hold a brainstorming session like right when I'm trying to quiet down.
Oh, it's incredibly common. And our sources emphasize that it's not about banishing those distractions altogether. It's more about learning to observe them, but without judgment.
Easier said than done, right?
Oh, absolutely. One technique they suggest, though, is to gently acknowledge the thought, without fully engaging with it.
Okay.
And then redirect your attention back to your breath or maybe your chosen point of focus.
Yep.
It's almost like you're training a puppy.
Yeah.
It really takes time and consistency. So we're training our minds to be more present and focused, even when, like, life is getting chaotic all around us.
Exactly. And the beauty is that this skill, this ability is to observe without judgment, it extends far beyond our meditation practice.
Right.
It can help us navigate stressful situations, manage difficult emotions, and even, communicate more effectively with others.
Wow. So we're not just talking about a morning routine here. We're talking about, like, a whole new way of being.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to kind of your initial question about unlocking that feeling of effortless focus,
Right.
And productivity throughout the day.
Right.
By incorporating even just a few minutes of morning meditation, you're not just, creating a sense of calm, but you're actually cultivating this mental toolkit, really, that empowers you to thrive, I think, in all areas of your life.
It's like we're giving our brain like a daily dose of super nutrients.
Yes.
But on that note, I'm curious, before we wrap up this deep dive, any final thoughts? Any nuggets of wisdom from our sources that we should leave our listener with?
I think what I find most fascinating about this whole exploration is that it really highlights the power of small but consistent actions.
Right.
If even just a few minutes of, morning meditation can have such a ripple effect on our day, what other simple yet powerful habits might we be overlooking?
Right.
What small changes can we make in our lives that could lead to really big shifts in how we feel, how we think, and how we show up in the world? I think that's something to ponder as you kind of embark on your own, morning meditation journey.
This deep dive has opened a door to a world of possibilities, and it's up to each of us to kind of explore what lies beyond. I like that.
So to our listeners, whether you're a seasoned meditator or just starting out, remember, the journey of self-discovery is ongoing.
Yes.
There's always something new to learn.
Yeah.
And there's always something new to explore. And who knows? You just might surprise yourself with what you discover along the way.
I love that. All right, everyone. Let's dive into something I think we've all wondered about, right? Can we really, like, truly make up for those late nights during the week by sleeping in on the weekend?
So tempting to think we can, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That feeling of sleeping in, hitting snooze. It's glorious.
Yeah, but there's some interesting research that might make us rethink those weekend sleep-ins.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, it has to do with how our bodies handle sleep. Like, it's not quite as simple as just, banking those sleep hours.
Sleep debt, is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Sleep debt is kind of a kitschy phrase, but it doesn't really tell the whole story.
So it's more than just the number of hours we're clocking. What else comes into play?
It's more about the timing, the consistency of our sleep that really matters. Think of it like our bodies run on this internal clock.
Our body's natural rhythm, right?
Exactly. The circadian rhythm, and it thrives on routine.
Okay, so even if we manage to squeeze in, say, 40 hours of sleep by the end of the week, but it's all over the place with the late nights and then sleeping in.
That's exactly what can disrupt that rhythm, that internal clock.
And that messes things up even if we technically get enough sleep overall.
Right. And there's this fascinating study, it was published in Current Biology, that looked at this exact scenario.
Interesting. So what happened? Did they find that those weekend sleep-ins actually worked?
Well, they had participants who, made up for their sleep on the weekends, brought their total sleep time back to a healthy average for the week.
Okay, sounds like a win-win.
But even then, there were still some noticeable effects, especially when it came to metabolism. Like they saw an increase in calorie intake after dinner and then a decrease in how much energy people were using. And even how their bodies were responding to insulin was different.
Wow, that's surprising. I mean, we know sleep is important, but to think that just the timing of it could have that much of an impact, like what's the connection there? Why would this pattern of not enough sleep during the week and then trying to catch up on the weekends, why would that be so detrimental,
Yeah.
even if we're getting the total hours of sleep in?
It's all tied back to that internal clock, that circadian rhythm we were talking about.
Okay, right?
It impacts so many things in our bodies. Hormones, cell regeneration, temperature, and our metabolism too. And it's all synced up with the light and dark cycle, which is why we feel alert during the day, sleepy at night.
Makes sense.
And when we mess with that, it's like,
Giving ourselves jet lag, but we haven't even gone anywhere.
exactly, social jet lag, they call it.
Huh, never heard that.
And just like if you were traveling across time zones, all that shifting can really throw things off.
Makes you feel kind of rough.
Yes, and this constant shifting back and forth can impact all sorts of things, especially our metabolism.
Like how? What happens?
Well, think about it. Think about it. Hormones like cortisol, the one that helps regulate our energy,
Yeah.
and melatonin, which tells our bodies it's time to sleep. When we mess with our sleep schedules, like those hormones get all out of whack.
Oh, so that's why we might feel hungrier or crave those sugary snacks after a night of bad sleep.
Exactly. Our appetite, our energy levels, it all gets affected. And it's not just about feeling sluggish.
Oh no, there's more.
Unfortunately, yeah. All this research is pointing to chronic sleep deprivation, even with those weekend catch-up attempts being linked to some pretty serious health risks.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Like what?
Well, things like a higher risk of things like hypertension.
My blood pressure.
Right, diabetes, heart disease.
Wow, that's scary.
Even a greater risk of...
Well, mortality.
You're really driving home the point here. So it's not just about feeling our best, it's about protecting our health for the long haul. So what can we do? Give up those weekend sleep-ins entirely.
It's tough, I know. Those weekend lie-ins are sacred.
Tell me about it. So what then? No more sleeping in ever again.
It's not about being perfect, it's about aiming for consistency. Even small changes can make a difference.
Okay, like what? Like try to stick to a similar bedtime and wake-up time every day,
Yeah.
even on the weekends. It helps to avoid that social jet lag feeling.
Consistency is key. Got it. But what about when we're really dragging? Those nights where we just don't get enough sleep.
We've all been there.
Do naps help at all, or are those messing with our sleep even more?
Actually, short naps, if they're timed right, can be helpful.
Really?
Yeah, like a quick 15, 20-minute nap in the early afternoon. It can actually boost alertness and help us think more clearly without messing too much with our sleep later on.
A little refresher for the brain. I like it. So not all naps are created equal.
Exactly.
Now, what about all those sleep tracking apps out there? Do they really work? Can they actually help us get better sleep? They're everywhere you look now. But can they actually help us sleep better, or just give us more data to worry about?
I think for some people, they can be really helpful. They give you that data about your sleep patterns,
Yeah.
Like if there are things that are disrupting your sleep, they can highlight those.
Yeah.
And even offer like personalized tips and stuff, even just keeping a sleep journal, like the old school way.
Oh, yeah, like writing it down.
Right, noting when you go to bed, when you wake up, anything that might have affected your sleep. That could be super insightful.
Yeah, I can see that. So it's about being more aware of our sleep habits, noticing patterns, figuring out what works for us individually.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'd say even more important than all the tracking is how we think about sleep in the first place.
Oh, interesting.
Instead of this thing we squeeze in if there's time, or worse, something we sacrifice, work, late night TV.
Yeah, I've been there.
We need to prioritize it. Like it's fundamental. It's an investment in our well-being, our health. Preventive medicine, that's how I see it.
Ooh, I like that. Sleep as preventive medicine. Okay, so we've learned a lot today. Those weekend sleep-ins, maybe not the magic solution we thought they were.
Right.
Those weekday sleep habits, they really do make a difference. But the good news is we've got more control than we think.
We really do.
By focusing on consistency, understanding our own sleep needs, really valuing our sleep, we can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. And, it might be that missing piece for better health and well-being overall. I know you're ready to level up your workout routine. You sent over some really interesting articles about how often you should be hitting the gym or the park, the yoga mat, wherever your happy place is.
And it's great that you're looking at this because so many people get stuck trying to find that magic number of workout days that'll work for everyone.
Right. It's so easy to fall into the trap of thinking there's a one-size-fits-all approach. So let's ditch that myth right away. You've given us some great sources to unpack here, and since weight loss is a common goal, let's start there. What's the inside scoop on workout frequency for shedding a few pounds?
Well, one of the articles we have here really emphasizes that healthy weight loss is a marathon, not a sprint. Think 1 to 2 pounds per week max. And the key to making that happen consistently, you guessed it, exercise.
Okay, so no crash diets and endless hours on the treadmill.
Definitely not. In fact, the article suggests aiming for 4 to 5 workouts a week, but, and this is important, they stress the value of gradually working up to that. So if you're just starting out, 2 to 3 days a week is a fantastic starting point.
That's a relief to hear. Starting slow and steady sounds way more sustainable than going all in on day one. But what exactly should those workouts look like? Are we talking strictly cardio here, or is there more to the story?
There's definitely more to it than just cardio. The article actually recommends a balanced mix of cardio, strength training, and even some core work and stretching for good measure.
I love that. It's a much more holistic approach than I think a lot of people expect. So it's not just about how many days you work out, it's about what you're doing on those days too.
Absolutely. And here's where it gets really interesting. They point out that strength training can actually boost your metabolism.
Okay, hold on. Explain that like I'm new to this whole fitness thing. What does that even mean in practical terms?
It means that when you build muscle, you're essentially turning your body into a calorie-burning machine even when you're not working out. So that strength training session, it's like a gift that keeps on giving long after you've left the gym.
Are you cool?
Which-
It is cool.
Yes.
So it's not just about the calories you burn during the workout itself. It's about the long-term metabolic benefits. Now, I know we're talking about strength training, but I have to ask, cardio is still important for weight loss,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. This source recommends aiming for either 30 minutes of moderate intensity cardio 5 days a week or 25 minutes of vigorous activity 3 days a week.
Okay, so just to be clear, moderate intensity is like a brisk walk where I can still hold a conversation, while vigorous is more like, well, let's just say I'd need a breather after 25 minutes.
You got it. And they even mention high-intensity interval training, or HIIT, which involves those short bursts of intense effort. It's like a turbocharged way to burn fat.
HIIT, got it. Now, for those of us who aren't cardio enthusiasts, what's the deal with strength training for weight loss? How often are we talking about hitting the weights?
For weight loss, the article recommends 2 to 3 days a week of strength training, and they specifically call out compound exercises, movements that work multiple muscle groups at once.
So we're talking about multitasking our way to a better physique. Give me an example. What's a compound exercise?
A classic example is a squat with a shoulder press. You're working your legs, core, and upper body all in one go. Compound exercises are super efficient, especially if you're short on time.
Love it. Maximum results, minimum time wasted. Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about those who are focused on building muscle. Does the ideal workout frequency change much when that's the goal?
It definitely does shift when you're aiming for muscle gain. You'd still want to incorporate 2 to 3 days of cardio, but those sessions would be shorter and more focused on high intensity. Think quick bursts of energy. And for the main course, brace yourself because we're talking at least 3 days a week of strength training.
3 days a week of lifting weights.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm getting a little intimidated, not gonna lie. Is that really doable for someone who you know isn't exactly a gym rat?
That's a great question, and the article actually breaks it down really well by experience level. If you're just starting out, full body workouts 2 to 3 times a week are a great place to begin. But as you get stronger and more comfortable, you can start to split your routine, focusing on upper body one day, lower body the next, and making sure you build in rest days for recovery.
So it's all about meeting yourself where you're at fitness-wise and gradually leveling up.
Yeah.
I like it. Now, speaking of rest and recovery, that's something I personally struggle with. I feel like I should be hitting the gym every day to see results, but I know that's not realistic or sustainable.
It's so common to feel that pressure. We're constantly bombarded with messages about hustling and pushing harder, but the truth is, rest is just as important as the workouts themselves, especially when it comes to building muscle. Remember how the article talked about the importance of letting your muscles repair and rebuild?
Yes, I remember reading that. But I have to confess, I sometimes feel a pang of guilt when I take a rest day, like I'm slacking off.
Yeah.
How can I reframe that in my mind?
Think of it this way. You're not slacking off. You're strategically allowing your body to recover so you can come back even stronger for your next workout. It's like sharpening the axe so you can chop more wood. And even on rest days, you can still be active. Gentle yoga, stretching, going for a leisurely walk, those are all fantastic ways to support your body's recovery process and prevent muscle soreness.
Okay. I can get behind that. I'm picturing myself stretching while listening to a podcast, maybe even enjoying a guilt-free slice of cake after a good workout. Speaking of workouts, one thing I've always struggled with is proper form, especially when it comes to lifting weights. I used to think the heavier, the better, but I quickly learned that's not the best approach, right?
That's a common misconception. And as the article points out, using proper form not only maximizes the effectiveness of each exercise, but it also drastically reduces your risk of injury. And trust me, injuries are not something you want to mess with. They can sideline you for weeks and totally derail your progress.
Tell me about it. I once threw out my back trying to lift too heavy, and it took me forever to get back on track. So what's your advice for avoiding those mishaps?
If you're unsure about the proper form for an exercise, don't be afraid to ask for help from a certified personal trainer or even consult a reliable online resource. They can guide you through the movements, ensure you're engaging light muscles, and help you avoid any unnecessary strain or injury.
Solid advice. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here on workout frequency for both weight loss and muscle gain. But before we move on to the next exciting chapter of our fitness deep dive, what are some key takeaways our listeners should keep in mind?
I'd say the most important thing is to remember that consistency is king. Whether your goal is weight loss, muscle gain, or simply improving your overall fitness, showing up for yourself consistently is key. But, and this is a big, but don't be afraid to start slowly and gradually increase the intensity and frequency of your workouts as you get fitter. It's all about progress, not perfection.
I love that. Start where you are, celebrate how far you've come, and keep striving for those goals. And you mentioned one key takeaway. What else should our listener keep in mind as they embark on their fitness journey? Don't leave me hanging. What's the other crucial takeaway for our listeners?
It's all about self-care. Remember, rest is not the enemy. It's actually your secret weapon. Listen to your body and don't be afraid to take a day or even two off each week for active recovery, especially when you're pushing yourself with strength training.
It's like that classic saying, rest, recover, rebuild. It's not about being lazy. It's about being strategic with your energy.
Exactly. And remember, active recovery doesn't mean parking yourself on the couch all day. We're talking about gentle yoga, stretching, going for a walk, anything that helps your body recover and recharge for your next workout.
Okay, so we've covered how often to work out, what kinds of workouts to focus on, and the importance of rest. Now I have a question that's always on my mind. When is the best time of day to work out? Does it really make a difference?
That's a question that sparks a lot of debate in the fitness world. And the truth is, there's no magic answer. The best time to work out depends on your individual preferences, schedule, and even your body type.
Interesting. So what are some of the factors people should consider when figuring out their ideal workout window?
Well, some people swear by morning workouts. They find that getting their heart rate up first thing kickstarts their metabolism, boosts their energy levels throughout the day, and even improves their focus and concentration. It's like they're priming their body and mind for success right from the get-go.
I can definitely see the appeal of that. Starting the day with a win, feeling energized and accomplished before most people even have their coffee. But I have to admit, I'm not exactly a morning person. So what about those of us who hit the snooze button a few times before dragging ourselves out of bed?
That's totally fine. The key is to find what works best for you. If you're not a morning person, forcing yourself to work out at the crack of dawn might actually backfire. You might feel burnt out or even increase your risk of injury if you're not fully awake and engaged.
That makes sense. It's all about working with your body's natural rhythms, not against them.
Oh.
So if morning workouts aren't your thing, what about evening workouts? What are the advantages of hitting the gym after work or school?
Evening workouts can be a fantastic way to de-stress after a long day. They can help you blow off steam, release any pent-up tension, and transition into a more relaxed state of mind before bed. Some people even find that evening workouts improve their sleep quality, as long as they're not exercising too close to bedtime.
I can definitely relate to that post-workout feeling of relaxation. It's like my body and mind have both been challenged and calmed at the same time. And what about those who prefer to squeeze in a workout during their lunch break? Is that a good option too?
Absolutely. A lunchtime workout can be a fantastic way to break up a long workday, boost your energy levels for the afternoon slump, and even clear your head so you can return to work feeling refreshed and refocused.
So many options. It seems like the best approach is to experiment a bit, try different times of day, and see what feels best for your body and your schedule.
Exactly. Listen to your body, pay attention to your energy levels, and don't be afraid to adjust your workout time based on what's working best for you at any given moment. Life is all about flexibility, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So to wrap up this incredible deep dive, Do you have any final pro tips for our listeners, something they can take with them as they embark on their fitness journeys?
Absolutely. Remember how we talked about those pesky plateaus? If you hit a point where you're not seeing the progress you'd hoped for, don't be afraid to shake things up. Add weight to your lifts, try new exercises, or change up your rep ranges. Keep your body guessing, and you'll continue to see results.
It's like they say, variety is the spice of life, and it's definitely the spice of a successful fitness routine. We've covered so much ground today, from workout frequency to exercise selection to the importance of rest and even the best time of day to work out. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is to find what works for you and to keep showing up for yourself consistently.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Remember, fitness is a journey, not a destination. There will be ups and downs, challenges and triumphs, but the most important thing is to keep learning, keep growing, and keep moving your body in ways that feel good to you.
That's such a powerful message to end on. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. It's about celebrating how far you've come and embracing the journey ahead. So to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep crushing those fitness goals, whatever they may be.
And remember, we're here to support you every step of the way. Share your wins, share your struggles, and let's keep the conversation going, because together we can achieve anything.
Beautifully said. And on that note, it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. But don't worry, we'll be back soon with another exciting topic to explore. Until then, stay curious, stay motivated, and keep on moving.